What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Sharp Objects Companion Podcast presented by The Disorderly. Head over to thedisorderly.com for the best in sports and entertainment. Disorderly Media on Twitter, Disorderly ENT on Facebook. And, get all your news there. So, I love this show, man. I love it. I mean, we're 3 episodes in. It's dark. And by the way, I feel like I'm not really blowing anyone's mind here. It stays dark. It's a very dark show. It's not like the next, however many episodes are spent holding hands and singing songs. Like it's dark. It's a dark show. It's a tough Sunday night watch if you're one of those people that don't really enjoy the dark shows. I personally do. I don't know why. I don't know if it makes me a weirdo. I love shows like this, so I'm fully in on it. The first 2 episodes are fantastic. This one's just as good. It's just brilliant. And I mean, we talked about this before, but even the way it's directed, like in the opening scene of this episode, there's a thunderstorm, and then corresponding with the flash of a thunder strike or lightning strike, you have the episode title, Fix. I should have said that at the beginning. This is season 1, episode 3, Fix. You obviously know that if you're listening. But at the beginning, the way they show that is it's like it flashes like you're seeing a lightning strike, and that's how they put Fix on it, and then it goes right into the fact that you realize that there's a thunderstorm going on in the background, and it's just such a well done. Just I don't know, the whole thing is just so cohesive and sharp. No pun intended there. That was actually an accident, but you know what I mean. Like it's just it all just ties in so well with each other, and it just feels like you're fully immersed in this show and the experience of the show and. It's just so good, man. It's such a good show. It's been a while since I've felt this strongly about a show this early on in its run. Basically episode 1, I was like, holy shit, we got a masterpiece on our hands. Episode 2, episode 3 hasn't slowed up at all. It's fantastic. And like I said, I don't know, multiple times in the first 2 episodes, I've read this book. So I know the plot. I know the story is solid. It's actually my favorite Flynn novel. So I know I'm going to enjoy the story. So then what's left? What are the other pieces of the puzzle? The acting, the performance by the cast, the directing, just the way everything looks and all that, all the aesthetic and performance pieces are fantastic. And I already know I like the story and where it's going and how it ends and everything. And it's all right. So then what could go wrong? This show is going to be just brilliant. Now I wonder. I think it's doing pretty well. I know critically it's doing well. I've seen a lot of people talk about it. So very unofficially, without diving into the nitty-gritty, details and numbers, it seems like the show is doing well. And we saw with Big Little Lies, same director, by the way, that was supposed to be 1 season, a little mini-series, and now they extended it into another season. And the book, I think, just covers that first season. So season 2, presumably will go beyond the book, and the writers are kind of taking the world that the book built and going beyond that and turning it into a whole series or whatever. Now, the same thing happened with Leftovers. Leftovers, season 1 was based on the book The Leftovers. And then, season 2 and 3 were the TV writers kind of going out on their own. And honestly, that show got better. So season 2 and 3 are much better than season 1. We're yet to see season 2 of Big Little Lies, but it could be a similar situation where it gets even better. If this show is popular, do they continue on that same path? I mean, we've literally seen it with this director already. So season 1 presumably will cover the entire book because it's not season 1, it's the entire series. It's a mini-series, right? Or a limited series, whatever they call that now. So, the season 1 should cover the span of that book, but could we see beyond that? I don't know. And, we'll discuss it when we get there, but I don't know. It's some interesting challenges. Whatever. I don't want to get into it. But yeah, so we'll see. I'm so compelled by the Amma character, by the way. The actress is doing an amazing job, first of all. Her name is Eliza Scanlon. I did a little digging into her career, and she's easily the least known and least experienced actress out of all the leads, for sure. But honestly, out of most of the people in the show in general. I mean, before this, she did 2 short films, a recurring role in some TV show called Home and Away, and she played a chick named Eliza, which obviously is her name as well, in some TV show called Do You Mind, which these could be big shows for all I know. I have no idea. She's Australian. So I assume those are Australian shows, and that could explain why I never heard of them or heard of her. But even if you just look at the length of her resume, she's a fairly new, fairly, it sounds like an insult, but inexperienced. It's just, that's the fact of it. She hasn't been doing this for that long, and that makes it almost more impressive what she's doing, because this looks like it could be her breakout role. She's killing it. Obviously, a huge platform, being a lead in an HBO drama like this, one that a lot of people are talking about. And the performance is so nuanced because she has to play both the roles of being this vulnerable little girl and showing some signs of mental illness, it seems like, when she's having a nervous breakdown or whatever, and being like this badass kind of like popular bad girl who she's hanging out with the the kids in the field and partying and stuff like that. She's playing like all these different roles, and she's a different character almost depending on who she's interacting with. Like her conversations with Camille are one thing, right? And then a conversation with a mom are another thing. When she's hanging out with her friends, it's another thing. And you're seeing when she's being flirty with boys, that's another thing. And you're seeing like all these different levels of her character, because that is the character. But from an acting perspective, it's brilliant. So I'm blown away by what she's doing right now. I think that this is, it's a big deal for her, and I'm sure we'll see her in a lot more stuff. We also get a brand new character in this episode named Alice, who was a fellow patient of Camille's at the mental hospital. I'm pretty sure we've seen her before in like flash cuts from previous episodes. You know how so Camille keeps having these flashbacks where she's seeing her sister that died and seeing the younger version of herself and all this stuff. And I feel like this actress has worked her way into flash cuts before too. I could be wrong about that, but anyway, we had no context on her, and now we definitely get that context. So for those who watch Handmaid's Tale, this actress, her name is Sydney Sweeney. She had a pretty profound story arc in the new season of that. I won't go into details, obviously, to avoid spoilers or whatever, but her performance and story in the new season of Handmaid's Tale was pretty elaborate, pretty crazy, and the actress did a phenomenal job with that. This obviously is a kind of a smaller little window of what we're seeing with her, but it also did a fantastic job. And I feel like I don't need to spell this out for anyone, because I feel like you would have noticed. I'm sure anyone listening to a podcast like this is deep enough immersed in a show. If you're going to listen to a companion follow-up podcast about a TV show, you're probably paying pretty close attention to the TV show itself. But obviously there's a tie-in. Whether we saw her in previous episodes, I don't know, but there's obviously a tie-in with this character, because you had and Camille, because you had Camille listening to her iPod throughout the entire, the first two episodes. It's kind of a focal point. And that's, by the way, something this director does a lot. He has really good music. Like, you see this in Big Little Lies as well. There's really good music in the show, but it's also part of the show. It's like an active piece. It's not background music. So Big Little Lies, the daughter, Reese Witherspoon's daughter in that show, is constantly playing songs, but talking about the songs she's playing. It's like something the character is actively doing. You know what I mean? It's not just like background score. And it's a really interesting tactic, and he uses it here too as well, where it's like, yeah, you're hearing Led Zeppelin, you're hearing LCD Sound System, all this great music, but you're actually watching her press play on the iPod, and then obviously now it becomes more a part of the story, because you find out that the iPod is something that Camille got from Alice. So Alice is listening to music, and they even have a conversation. That's how it took place in the past as well. They have a conversation where she was like, do you listen to music? And Camille's like, no, not really. And she's like, what? And like kind of introduces her to music. And then obviously the way that story ends with Alice is her killing herself. And, the iPod is something that Camille acquired, something that she kind of remembers Alice by. And that, so it's that the music that she's listening to, that your eyes are really drawn to it in the show, because they'll zoom in on the iPod, they'll show her pressing it. It's clearly like a damaged iPod, it has some cracks in it and stuff. And also, who uses an iPod nowadays? You know what I mean? Like, this presumably is present day, and most people just have their music on their phone or whatever. So, why does she have this old iPod? And it seems like, now we know it's from Alice. So it's interesting how that all tied in. So whether we've seen flashbacks of Alice or not, she has had her stamp on the first two episodes. And of course, this one ends where she throws the iPod out the window. Whether that's symbolic of her moving on from this sad thought, or she just can't face it anymore because she's seeing too many parallels with her sister, or whatever it is. Stepsister now, too, Emma. There's obviously a big tie-in with this relationship of this either mother-daughter relationship or big sis, little sis, like whatever it is, that you're seeing this repeat over and over again. And it's basically a string of failures. Now, the first one, Camille's sister, when they were young, her dying seems like that had nothing to do with Camille. It's not her fault. She got sick or whatever. It had nothing to do with her, but I think she's kind of blamed for it, because it seems like her mother kind of took her pain out on Camille, and that's why Camille is so damaged now. And then you see this one where I feel like she was trying to save Alice and couldn't, obviously, because Alice, ended up killing herself. By the way, that had a lot to do with her relationship with her mother, so there's another tie-in there with that sort of dynamic. But Alice died, and I feel like Camille kind of blames herself for that. Once again, not her fault. She's not the one that did the damage. She can't be responsible for saving everybody. But I feel like she was kind of blaming herself for that as well. And now we're faced with a third sister, third person in this position, Emma. So does Camille feel responsible for Emma? Does she feel like she needs to save her in some way? I don't know. But that is this sort of, repetition throughout the show of how these relationships are developing, and how, the role that Camille takes in this, and the responsibility she feels for, saving these young girls, and which also obviously ties in with the two young girls that got murdered. And it's all about Camille feeling that responsibility. And I think I can't help but to think that a lot of that has to do with Camille trying to save the young version of herself. That's what she keeps flashing back to when she was a young girl. And if she can stop some other young girl from going through pain or whatever, like it's almost going to be like a I don't know how to describe it, like a her healing her former self in a way. And I think that's what's driving her right now, whether she's aware of that or if it's subconscious. It's interesting to see this pattern repeat itself over and over again, basically in all these different places in her life. Just some news and notes, too. There's obviously a weird power dynamic between John Keane and his girlfriend. She's clearly very controlling of John. She loves to be in power. When you see John talk a little bit, it seems like he's more strong-minded than we thought in the previous episodes. But every time he gets a little bit out of control or does something that's a little bit, not under the thumb of his girlfriend kind of takes over and speaks for him and just controls him. Very, very clearly a controlling relationship. So, just something to keep an eye on. And there seems to be some weird shit going on with Camille's mother. Obviously, right? We've seen that in the past two episodes. But she's walking a very fine line of being embarrassed and protective of the family's reputation, and of course, directly / intentionally preventing Camille and the police, from finding the truth. So that's the question, right? Is she intentionally trying to stop the police and I guess her daughter in turn from figuring out who's murdering these kids, because that would make her complicitly involved in it? Or is she just really just embarrassed and so self-conscious about the family name and the dynamic around town that she's doing what she appears to be doing on the surface anyway, and just kind of sweeping things under the rug. She doesn't want to get involved. She doesn't want the family to be tied to the story in any way. That's the question. That's something we need to keep an eye on throughout this season. What's the relationship? What's the real relationship with Camille and Camille's mother and these murders? Is there one? It'll be an interesting thing to keep an eye on. But that'll do it for this episode. So it was entitled Fix. We see that when Alice kills herself by drinking the Drano or whatever, and by the way, very graphic scene, and Camille runs in and starts carving something into her arm, we find out she carved in Fix, which ties into the fact that she's trying to fix these little girls, a.k.a. fix herself in some sort of meta way. So interesting tie in there. Aptly titled episode. And it's just a great show, man. I'm looking forward to the rest of it. It's fantastic. I hope you guys are enjoying this companion podcast. Hopefully I can provide some insight. My DMs are open if you want to reach out on Twitter. The name is at Nick Rizner, NickRizner. DMs are open, so reach out there. Give this podcast a follow, rate, review, subscribe. Tell a friend about it. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube if that's where you're listening. And thanks again, guys. I'll see you next week, and I hope you enjoy your weekend. Peace, guys.